Hello, and thank you for tuning in to my final presentation of my inquiry project. My subject will be about how the dialogic theory can enhance an individual's daily life. I myself, Asia Watkins, will be presenting this presentation to you. So let's start. Abstract. So I based off the dialogic theory off of the movie Think Like a Man. It follows 4 couples, but in this case, we will follow Lauren and Dominic. They are categorized as the dreamer versus the woman who is her own man. And based off the very beginning, there are already these misconceptions and preconceived notions of character traits. So, in my findings, I first want to make note of the fact that in the movie, there's the release of this new book, Think Like a Man, which is an actual book that you can buy at Barnes and Noble, Amazon, or wherever you shop for your books. And this is the foundation of how Lauren and Dominic prepare to present themselves to one another. And it also already gives off that misrepresentation. So, in the first encounter, Lauren is at a restaurant that Dominic works at. Dominic is a low-income chef, while Lauren is a top media executive. And their communication is convoluted because Dominic actually follows Lauren out of the restaurant from a car he was supposed to valet. This car is very fancy, very sporty. It has the butterfly doors, and automatically Lauren becomes impressed off of that misrepresentation and agrees to go out on the date. So in our second encounter, it promotes that inaccurate facade as Dominic uses a car service through someone he knows as a favor to come and pick her up. This is not something that Dominic would usually do as he cannot afford it. And the person who's driving the car is actually one of his good friends as well. This violates that communication ethic again by lack of transparency, and it builds a false narrative between the two. So before we go into that third encounter, I want to make note that Lauren and Dominic actually saw each other again as a coincidence. She was a speaker at a high-profile event while Dominic was an hors d'oeuvre server. And during that scene, he sees her before she sees him, and he runs back to the kitchen and actually runs into someone, dropping all of the hors d'oeuvres and causing a disturbance. And Lauren sees him, and she automatically thinks, wow, that's not the guy who I thought he was. So let's move on into that second date. What Dominic is doing is trying to reel her back in, and he's violating that interpersonal communication ethics by trying to take ownership of the dating relationship. And interpersonal communication resists ownership. There's no ownership between the two of them. No one owns each other, but that is his tactic and that is his strategy. So he engages Lauren in conversations that he knows she will be fond of, such as wine, a special type of wine, a high value wine that he knows, Lauren will like because she's more of that high value woman. And it just becomes misleading. So as we continue in our findings, we see that Dominic and Lauren both play tug of war in their dominance. He uses his conversation as a way of dominating the relationship, and she used her high value and prominence to try to dominate the situation. So after that third date, they still continue to date, but Dominic is learning how to be more of himself, showing who he really is. She's seen the real car that he drives, and he feels that, okay, she's becoming more comfortable. But Lauren realizes, you know what? No, I'm still sticking to my guns. I'm not going to be open. And she actually runs into an old boyfriend who is more of that high value man with the money, with the cars, with the status. And in that fourth encounter, Lauren breaks off the dating relationship between her and Dominic. While she has great news for him about a perspective, she helped him write based off of trying to start his own cooking business. She also becomes cold by letting him know she doesn't want to see him anymore. And Dominic is let down because as time has went on, he's become more open and genuine and sincerely likes Lauren for who she is. So in that last encounter, Lauren realizes finally that she hasn't been true to herself. She hasn't been genuine to Dominic, but she wants him, and she realizes that that ex-boyfriend that she ran into is not who she is and what she truly wants. And so she tries to rekindle that romance with Dominic. And while he is hesitant at first, he realizes her sincerity and how genuine he is, and he agrees to rekindle. And that closes off the movie. So in the discussion, I find that dialogue is a constant communication exchanges in that movie, which is in this particular moment. They continue to have dialogue, but what we see is that it shifts. And when it shifts, we lose track of that communication ethics. We are so busy trying to show ourselves in a certain way and not being true to ourselves. And dialogue should allow us to approach conversation based on our past experience, but not let those past experience dictate who we are today and be closed off to other people's opinions. A dialogic approach to communication ethics recognizes meaning and understanding. So in conclusion, what I found is the communicative practice during that dating phase between Lauren and Dominic is crucial. And not only just for Lauren and Dominic, but for all people. We see that we become so wrapped up into our own selves that we're not being true to the other people. And while most people abandon such practices because of past experiences, and preconceived notions of other people, we lose that communication ethic. When we abandon that concept of being open, we abandon basic communication ethic principles. So what I recommend is that we all practice that dialogic approach to communicative ethics and exchanges, and most importantly, be open to one another's standpoint. You never know what you'll learn, and that is what realizing the good is. Not always agreeing with someone, but understanding them. And I think between Lauren and Dominic specifically, the two of them will be able to better communicate with one another and agree to continue dating following their realization of being open and honest with one another. What I can imply is that both parties can truly evaluate and discern whether or not the other is a good fit. This helps us when we have that dialogic approach, when we're honest from the very beginning instead of those convoluted conversations and confusion when all of this could have been avoided or even promoted. If we, a lot of times we look at that negative side, but maybe if we are more open, we can see that, hey, this person really might be for me, which I think is a huge thing in the dating scene right now. And when we practice this dialogical approach to communication ethics, it's valuable and it utilizes as it helps define the meaning of someone. What makes the common sense concept of communication so valuable in a dating realm is that we can't assume that our definition of common sense is the same as others. So suggestions for future research, I suggest setting up interviews with all types of couples, whether it be interracial couples or your older couples to get that wisdom and really have that open dialogue. These are my references, and I hope you guys enjoyed my presentation and you look at dialogic theory from a different standpoint. Thank you.